Hello, my name is Scott Fisher. I'm a psychiatrist and the lead facilitator and clinical program manager at the Center for Psychedelic Research at Segal Trials, located in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. I'm here today to speak with Preston about his experience participating in a study of a psychedelic for the treatment of generalized anxiety disorder.
Hi, my name is Preston. I'm here to speak about my experience taking a psychedelic in a clinical trial here at Segal Trials.
We're very grateful to have Preston here today to speak to us on this subject. So let's get started. So why don't we start off with, you participated in the study of a psychedelic for a treatment of anxiety. So
Yes.
maybe you could just tell us a little bit about kind of your experience of anxiety kind of leading into the study and kind of what that had been like for you.
Okay, yeah. So leading into the study, I definitely had been dealing with anxiety for what I would say is kind of like my whole life. And I never really knew like an underlying cause of it or anything. I couldn't pinpoint it to like a traumatic event or to any like one point in my life. So I just always been dealing with anxiety, always like a lot of intrusive thoughts, a lot of thinking about like, oh, what does this person think of me? Or how did I sound while I was speaking? Or everybody knew my voice was shaky, just like a lot of negative self-thoughts and like intrusive thoughts. And that's kind of what brought me to the study to kind of help with that.
And previous to entering into the study, had you tried any other sorts of like treatments, either through a psychiatrist or a psychologist or other sort of coping techniques to manage the anxiety?
Yeah, well, I tried just living with it, and that didn't work the best. But then I also tried Wellbutrin in the past, and it wasn't the best fit. It like kind of exacerbated that.
Which is a medication.
Yeah,
Wellbutrin, yeah.
psychotropic.
Yeah.
And then I also did therapy in the past, and I don't know, wasn't really that big of a fan of that either, but tried it out and didn't really benefit from it. And then I was just kind of living with it, and so I saw the ad on Instagram and I decided to send in my info, and that's how that happened.
So you found us from an ad on Instagram.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And do you remember what caught your attention about the ad that you saw on Instagram?
Probably that you could get paid for a clinical trial.
Yes,
And
yeah.
I think clinical trials are pretty cool. I want to go into medicine, and I think it's related to like advanced medicine. So I'm like, why not?
Yeah. So
What's the worst that can happen? I'm probably not going to die.
Yeah. So most of our studies are paid kind of volunteer
Yeah.
positions for treatment of.
And I wasn't working at the time, so I mean, that was also, it feels like everything just kind of lined up to do it. So I'm like, why not?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it all just moved really fast, and yeah.
And at what point did you know that it was a study of a psychedelic for the treatment of anxiety?
I think actually after I spoke to Sarah the first time, she's like, how would you feel about LSD? And I'm like, what about it? I don't know anything about it.
So Sarah was one of our screeners.
Yeah.
Kind of like mentioned that to you.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Uh-huh.
She brought it up in the intake call to see if I was comfortable with it.
Yeah.
I guess to like feel out if I was a good candidate or not.
Yeah.
And it didn't scare me away. It also kind of
Yeah.
intrigued me. And
It
I'm
did.
like,
Yeah.
I didn't really know anything about psychedelics beforehand, so I was kind of like, do you really use a street drug to like try to make your anxiety better?
Yeah. So it was like intriguing, but also seemed a little like,
Yeah,
well, that's kind of unusual.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Great. And in terms of like, your comfort level entering into the study and trying, what, some people consider, in our study, it's not really a street drug. It's
Yeah.
more of a investigational,
controlled.
medicinal product. So it's not something that would be found on the street, but it's maybe has some similarities to a psychedelic you could find on the street.
Yeah.
So like, what was like your comfort level in terms of like, thinking about trying this drug that has a reputation for the treatment of anxiety?
So I was told about it and I was intrigued originally, and then I came in, I saw the facility, I met you and Sarah and all the other staff, and I don't know, I mean, it felt safe. It didn't feel like I was in a dangerous place. It felt welcoming. So I wouldn't say that it was really uncomfortable at any point.
Mm-hmm.
I was probably anxious about the whole experience because someone with anxiety coming in is going to be anxious.
Right.
But I would say it was overall comfortable.
Yeah.
I was open to it.
Yeah. And you said it felt welcoming, your experience here at our trial site.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
you and her spent like an hour with me before the session to like get to know me, make sure it was a good fit.
Yes.
I didn't feel like pressured that I had to do it.
Right.
It was more like, oh, I mean, this is a treatment option. Let's get to know you, see if it's a good fit,
Yeah.
instead of trying to make. It didn't feel like I had to meet somebody's agenda.
Right. Yeah. It
Yeah.
felt pretty voluntary.
Yeah,
kinda
yeah.
Throughout.
Yeah, exactly.
And we place a lot of emphasis on like informed consent and making sure that you are kind of informed of, what is being proposed in the study, what are the risks that we know of, what are the possible benefits that we're trying to study. Did you feel like that was a thorough process in terms of like getting information about the purpose of the study and kind of those details?
Like, as in, did you guys give me all the info beforehand?
Yes.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you guys got my history, you saw what I had gone through.
Mm-hmm.
You told me about other treatments that were available, even if it like wasn't through you guys, like conventional psychiatry, therapy, pretty much like all the other things that you can explore besides a clinical trial.
Right.
So I definitely think it was very informed. I think I knew all the treatment options by the time it came to like, okay, do you want to take this or do you want to not?
Right. Yeah. And did you do any of kind of your own research about, psychedelics and using the research that's ongoing into the study of these for anxiety and depression and things like that?
Yeah. So I had worked I've worked in psychiatry, like the psychiatry field, since I was 19. And then I started up a program for Spravato at my last job, one of my last jobs. And so I always knew it was like a treatment, but I didn't know too much about what it was like or what the person experienced or really how it helped, just kind of like what it worked on.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the knowledge I had about it a little bit.
Yeah.
Then one of my best friends is a psychiatrist, and she had brought it up in conversations here and there. And so I have like very little bit of knowledge. And then after the screener, what was it, the first time I met you and Sarah?
Uh-huh.
After that day, I went and did a little bit of research, just like did research on the doses that were going to be possibly given during the trial, so I could know what to expect, which I think was like the only research that I really did beforehand.
In terms of, the information that like we offered you or the information that you found on your own, were there any aspects that like either particularly appealed to you or like a little bit like, oh, I don't know about this in terms of participating in the study?
I was worried about having a bad trip. Because people always talk about that.
Yes.
Or just getting placebo and being stuck here for 12 hours. But I mean, that was like the only negative thing that I had seen and thought of beforehand. I also had some people be like, you're going to do what? So I mean, I didn't tell too many people beforehand. I told them afterwards.
Yeah.
So there was a little bit of resistance from like friend group and stuff.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, I was just intrigued about what could happen. Like if they're researching it and it was researched in the past and it's being researched again now, then there must be some kind of benefit. So I was kind of skeptical.
Yeah, but open.
Yeah, but open to it.
Yeah. And also as part of, the study, we do like a pretty lengthy like screening process that involves, getting your labs and physical exam and a lot of different questions. How was that experience in terms of like all the sort of in-depth evaluation and assessment we do as part of the study screening?
How was it? It was nice. I mean, it was comforting. I got to know that my labs were all good, my EKG was all good, my blood pressure was good. I got to know I was like in good physical health from like a medical standpoint, because before then I hadn't been to a PCP in a little bit. So the free doctor visit pretty much was nice.
Yeah.
But yeah, I liked that you guys took like a whole look at me to make sure I was good in like a lot of different ways before going into it.
Yeah, it's a really in-depth evaluation.
It was.
To make sure or try and ensure as much as possible, your safety in moving forward in the study, and also that you qualify. in terms of the criteria for entering the study. And I'm glad you had a good experience of it. How was your experience working with the study staff in terms of the screening process?
The people here were awesome. I think they were all really friendly, and I got to know them over I don't even remember how many visits I had here, like 8 or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, I got to know everybody by name, first name, so that was cool.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't just feel like going to a regular doctor's office where you
Yeah.
don't know anybody or recognize them.
Yeah.
But it was pretty cool. I felt like everybody was kind of getting me ready for this cool adventure I was going to go on.
Yeah. Yes.
But yeah, I liked it. I liked the office staff. I liked the office setup. I wouldn't really change anything.
Right.
Yeah.
In terms of, you had mentioned kind of the preparation sort of work that you did with my partner and I, Sarah, who, in that study we were termed the dosing session monitors, but we're both, highly trained psychotherapists, as well. And curious, what was it like to kind of have that sort of, preparation work where, there's kind of education offered and, us getting to know you some, like how important was that, would you say, in terms of being in the study?
I would say, like, how important was it to me?
Yeah.
Pretty important, because I was going to sit here for like 12 to 16 hours with 2 people that I didn't know before, until a couple days ago. So, yeah, I mean, I think it was important that I was comfortable.
Yeah.
That's what you're asking.
Yeah. Just
Yeah.
did that seem like an important part of the study to have met with us?
Oh, yeah. Heck yeah.
Yeah.
Because if I was just with 2 strangers, I'd be like, I don't know, your thoughts get kind of crazy when you're in the middle of the dosing, so maybe it could have not been such a helpful experience.
Right.
It could have been a more detrimental experience.
Yeah.
Maybe. I don't know.
So there was at least some sort of comfort level
Yeah.
working with us going into the dosing session.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'd say so.
Yeah. Well, maybe we could segue now to, talking a bit about like the dosing session and just kind of what that day was like for you. And, I can ask more specific questions, but just, in terms of what you remember from the dosing day, like just describe your experience of it.
All right. So I got here at like 7 a.m. And then I got some blood drawn, got vitals taken. Then I waited for you guys. I came, sat back here, and then we talked for a little bit, made sure I was comfortable. And then they, I think, took some more blood for the DNA portion of it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got the capsules, and then I took them. I think it was like 8 of them.
Mm-hmm.
And I just kind of laid back and had headphones on, had a blindfold on, and yeah, it was kind of like a blank slate, my brain during that time, so that was nice.
Yeah.
And then the following 12 hours were pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you describe kind of what your experience was like during those 12 hours after you took the capsule?
Yeah, for sure. So I think I had just been like resting, eyes closed, kind of meditating for like 60 to 90 minutes. I don't know at what point it kicked in, to be honest, because I feel like I was in the same state up until I took my blindfold off, which I don't know if I was supposed to do that or not, but...
Well, yeah, you definitely... I mean, so we offer an eye mask for some people. They like to have a more sort of introspective journey and experience kind of what goes on in their minds. So we often sort of suggest that people do that, but not everyone finds that to be the most productive use of their time.
Yeah.
And I sort of remember you did spend some time introspective, but you also spent a lot of time, I would say, more engaged kind of.
Yeah, I feel
with
like
us in the environment.
During the entire time, I just kind of got to look out the windows, admire everything outside, admire nature.
Yeah.
Speak to you guys about whatever I really wanted to, and it was just like a really enjoyable time. I didn't have the experience that I had read about afterwards, that some people like go back and dig through everything they had gone through in the past and kind of make amends. For me, it was more like a light-hearted, fun experience, but in the end, it was really beneficial for me. So I still think about it every day. I'm like, was it the chemical itself that I took that helped make a change, or was it what I experienced during the session? That I still don't know. But it was an overall great experience. Can't complain.
When so you took the capsules, and you mentioned as part of the study, there can be a placebo that you get, and in that study there were actually 4 other different active doses that you could have gotten. So we still don't know, because it's what we call like a double-blind sort of study. So we don't know what dose level you got, if any. But some people feel like on dosing day that they notice some changes in how they feel, and other people notice minimal or no changes. So I'm wondering, did you notice anything specific after you took the capsules in terms of how you were feeling?
Like day up?
Yes.
Yeah, so I mean, I definitely felt like I wasn't in a normal state of mind.
Okay.
I definitely felt like I was quote unquote tripping.
Yeah.
And usually, like, if I was just talking to you guys, I'd be kind of like more quiet and reserved and maybe a little bit more anxious overall, but I felt like there wasn't a care in the world, and I just got to be free, and so that was nice.
You felt carefree.
Yeah, which is something I hadn't felt in a long time. So I think for me it was like kind of a reminder of that, of like being able to just have fun and be carefree and enjoy my time instead of be anxious all the time. I don't know how to explain it, but it's hard to explain what you experience while you're under the effects of it.
Right.
Like that screener that you guys give the day after, the mystical experience scale.
Right.
Like everything on that screener was like a yes, like a 10 out of 10 yes, and it just feels like an experience you can't put into words, but I feel like it was like one of the most important experiences of my life. And
wow.
Yeah, and I don't know why, but it just was. It was awesome. It was like, I don't know, it was like I felt connected to everything and everyone, and everything mattered, and I don't know. It was just a great experience.
Wow.
It's hard to put it into words, to be honest.
Well, there's so much I'd love to dig into there in terms of what you said, and I mean, in terms of the difficulty putting it into words, or sometimes we'll use the term like ineffable, in terms of just
that
difficult
applies.
to describe. That felt like part of your experience, like you experienced something that afterwards you weren't sure how to describe.
Yeah, it didn't feel like real life. Ineffable.
And in terms of, you mentioned the term mystical experience, or sometimes people will kind of use the phrase like a spiritual experience or something along those lines. You'd mentioned feeling a sense of connection. Yeah, could you describe that more?
Yeah, I felt connected to the nature that I saw outside. I felt connected to you guys. I felt connected to myself in ways that I hadn't before, and I had all of these thoughts about like wanting to be kind to myself and kind to the people around me, and just like respect life more. So yeah, I mean, now it's kind of like a take into the connection, but it's just like a feeling. I don't know how to explain it. Like, during the session, it's just like a feeling that you don't feel while you're not under the influence of LSD.
Right.
But yeah, it was awesome, and it was life changing, and I still think that I'm affected by it to this day in a positive way.
Say more about that.
So I mean, now I would say that I think more about like the consequences of my actions, whether positive or negative, like how it's gonna overall affect the world, the environment, people around me, before I act on things. Like in a friend group, I'll be able to like process and think more about how it'll affect them. Even like everyday little things like not using single-use plastics or like throwaway stuff.
Say about that. Like
it just made me want to be kinder to the world and to not be like wasteful, to just be more conscious of the environment and that we're all sharing this planet. To have to be a good steward of it.
Right.
And I had those thoughts before, but it's like tenfold now than before.
And that may have been related to your experience of increased connection. And
Yeah,
stuff.
exactly.
Yeah.
That's what I think. That's what I think for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's kind of 2 cents on increased connection.
Yeah, I really appreciate you sharing all that. And I definitely also want to explore more kind of
Yeah.
what, life has been like post kind of study for you. But I guess there's a few more things I'd love to dig into in terms of just like, we explored kind of the mystical, experience aspects of, your study participation and the dosing day. And you mentioned some kind of emotional changes. It sounds like, you felt more relaxed. You felt
During the session or
during the session. You felt more relaxed. You felt happy. I mean, what else?
I felt, relaxed, happy. I felt like everything was entertaining and everything felt like pleasurable. Everything felt great. There was like no negative experience about it.
Yeah.
I would do it again.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd like to hear more about that as well.
But it was a great experience. There were no negative feelings.
Yeah, I was curious because you were worried about having a potentially bad trip. Yeah.
Yeah, after I had that experience, I look back at it and I'm like, how could somebody have a bad trip? Like, I feel like the setting that was here made it so that it couldn't have a bad trip. Like, there was nothing negative about anything, and I can't comprehend how somebody would have a bad trip under the effects of LSD. But I would imagine if it's like not as controlled and set up as here, then maybe somebody could have a bad trip.
Yeah.
And it could be like something very negative that could negatively impact somebody, just like I was positively impacted by it.
Yeah.
If it was like a bad setting,
right,
then it could have been a really negative experience.
Yeah, I'm glad you used those terms. And in terms of the setting, like we're here in the dosing room that you actually had the study drug that day. So how important? Sorry?
It looked different.
Yeah. During the dosing day, yeah. In terms of like, what aspects of the setting do you think increased your comfort level with, doing the dosing?
Yeah, so I like that I got to know you guys beforehand.
Yeah.
And it didn't feel like I was just with strangers. Like, that was probably the most important part to me. And also the way that the room is set up, like, it's kind of like a living room.
Yeah.
Or like a living room / bedroom. It just feels very homey.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like it's a clinical setting.
Right.
It feels like
a hospital room.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like I was in for a medical procedure.
Right.
It felt like I was with people that I knew and trusted, and I was in a place that felt homey.
Yeah.
So, the setting was great.
Yeah.
And I think if I hadn't gotten to know you guys beforehand, then, like I said, it would have been maybe not as good.
Well, and I'd like to mention that, Sarah and I, the therapists or dosing session monitors, we were with you for the entire, 12-hour session.
You guys had a long day.
Yeah, we all did, but it was a great day. And I guess, how important was it for you to, not be left alone and to kind of have us there offering, whatever levels of support seemed necessary?
I would say, to me, it was pretty important. I felt like I could have been alone at some times.
Yeah.
And not gotten into trouble.
Yes.
But it was nice having you guys there if I needed to talk through anything or if I needed to express anything or needed any comfort on any level. It was nice to have you guys within reach.
Yeah.
And also, even though I didn't have to reach out to you guys too much regarding my emotional state during the session, it was very comforting to know that you guys were there if I did need you, that I wouldn't be going through it alone.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And there was a musical playlist that was playing. Did that factor into your experience much, would you say?
Yeah, it was all during the time that I had the headphones on.
Yeah.
It was very thought-provoking music. It was very introspective music. I don't even know what to call that kind of music.
Mm-hmm.
But it was well picked.
Yeah.
It was well picked, and it was conducive to what you guys were aiming to do during the session.
Right.
But yeah, the music was great.
Great.
There were some points I wanted to listen to my own music, but
Yeah.
but the music was good.
Oh, all in all, it seemed helpful.
Yeah,
Yeah.
all in all, yeah.
Yeah.
I think it was probably better that you guys had picked out a playlist than leaving it to me.
Right.
Did everybody get the same playlist?
Everyone listens to the same playlist.
Yeah.
I mean, our different studies will sometimes have different playlists, but within, a given study, it's the same playlist. So,
Cool.
And it's kind of
Okay.
designed to...
Who
you know,
designed it?
It depends on the study. In this case, it was the study sponsor. Some of their staff had put the playlist together. But yeah, the music's definitely intended to help support, kind of the emotional arc or trajectory of
Yeah.
a psychedelic trip. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And actually, now that I think more about it, every time I think about the experience, I feel like I still like a very topical answer.
Uh-huh.
But then the more I think about it, the more like comes to mind. Like
Yeah.
during the time that I did have the headphones on and I was laying back, I was able to like kind of reflect on everything in life that made me
Uh-huh.
anxious.
Yeah.
Like I was able to, like I'm very anxious about like going out in public and like being caught up in a school, in a mass shooting, for example. Like that's always a thought that's on my mind.
The catastrophic
Yeah.
thinking.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
exactly. Good
Yes.
words.
Yeah.
So a lot of catastrophic thinking, and I was able to kind of just recognize that isn't actually going to happen,
Mhm.
and most likely not going to happen. And if it does, then what are you going to do about it?
Yeah.
So I was able to kind of come to terms with a lot of catastrophic thoughts I had.
Change
and
in
have-
perspective.
Yeah,
in some
and
ways,
honestly, I still have a lot of the catastrophic thoughts
Yeah.
to this day.
Yeah.
Probably at the same frequency and severity as before the study,
Uh-huh.
but instead of being inundated in the catastrophic thoughts and letting them affect me and letting them make me stay home, and stuff like that, I'm able to kind of just like step away and recognize like, okay, that's a thought I'm having, but what am I going to do about it?
Yeah.
You just got to live with it, and it doesn't carry any negative feelings with it anymore.
Yeah.
So, what somebody told me after is that I kind of gained the observer's perspective regarding a lot of the things that made me anxious in life before, because
Mhm.
honestly, almost everything's the same. The severity of my anxiety has decreased a lot,
Yeah.
but I'm able to handle it and handle myself a lot better.
Yeah.
Because I just kind of like, I'm not in the problem's more like over there, and
Right.
then deal with it when you want, or
Yeah.
if you need to.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It sounds like, some of the symptoms or experience of anxiety are still present, but not as controlling
Yeah.
your life in some ways.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like I did like 10 years of therapy in like 12 hours.
Yeah. Wow, that's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And those are all like thoughts that I had on my own,
Yeah.
which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
Like it didn't take an external person to screw those into me.
Yeah. Well, what else has kind of any other changes or life changes that have happened since your dosing day and participation in the study?
I'd say since then I'm not as hard on myself, which is nice. Like if things don't go exactly on my timeline, I'm not gonna like beat myself up over it. It's kind of just like time passes, things
Yeah.
happen, and you'll deal with it, and you'll come out the other end the same or stronger. So,
You're kinder to yourself.
yeah,
Yeah.
I definitely say so. And like I
Yeah.
said earlier, I'm more thoughtful about how things will affect me and people around me, and even people I don't even know,
Yeah.
the planet, the environment overall. I don't know. I feel like the experience has made me a lot kinder of a
Yeah.
person and more thoughtful of a
Mhm.
person compared to beforehand. Not saying beforehand I was like
Yeah.
a bad person or
Yeah.
anything, but it just made me feel more present and
Yeah.
more mindful on like my everyday life. But life has been significantly better afterwards than it was before,
Yeah.
and I'm able to cope better and deal with things better. And
Yeah.
yeah, who would have thought a little bit of LSD?
I guess I'm curious also, did you at any point experience any like side effects, adverse effects, negative effects, either during the dosing day or afterwards? Was there any part where you're like, ooh, like that didn't feel good at all?
Um, I mean, I had a headache the day of,
Yeah, the
towards the
yeah.
end,
Okay.
but I think that's probably warranted based on like what your brain goes through that
Yeah.
day. Other than that, don't really think I had any side effects, to be
Yeah.
honest.
Yeah.
I didn't have any side effects. I didn't have any long-lasting negative effects. The day after was a little bit difficult, which usually, I guess, based off what I've read and what I've heard from other people, isn't really the experience that other people have.
Mm.
But for me personally, I didn't have a good experience the day after. I felt like something was wrong with me, or the day after I was actually very anxious and just feeling not good overall,
Uh-huh.
and like constantly tearful, and it just wasn't a good day.
Mm-hmm.
But then the day after that, I felt like a brand new person. I felt like I had purged out all the negative on the day before.
Uh-huh.
So I don't know. I guess the day after wasn't the best, but
Yeah.
then again, I was able to call you guys and be reassured like everything's okay.
Yeah.
Everything's gonna be okay. You're just having a bad day today, and
Yeah.
even though I knew that was what was happening, it was nice to hear from
Right.
you guys. And when I
Yeah.
called the office, and it didn't feel like I was annoying you guys.
Yeah.
Maybe I was, but
No, not at all. I mean, I guess this would be a good segue to talk about like what was the level of support like for you after the
yeah.
dosing day, in terms of both kind of, we do follow up with some of our study assessments, and also do follow up sessions with the therapists and dosing session
Yeah.
monitors. How was that process for you?
So I might need you to remind me if you remember, but the day after, did I meet with you guys in the morning?
I think we do meet with you the in that study right the day after. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I think I met with you guys
Yes.
the day after, and then that was a pretty tough session. But it wasn't because of anything that had come up, honestly. It was just because of I just couldn't comprehend what I had experienced. And that was just really difficult
Yeah.
for me. And it sounds kind of silly, but that's just what my experience was the day
Yeah.
after.
Yeah.
And then you guys did make yourselves available to me, and I was able to call you. I was able to message you guys, call the office if I needed to. And you guys made sure I was safe. So that was the first session afterwards. And then you guys offered 2 more, I think.
Right.
And
Yes.
I'd say those were overall beneficial. I was able to discuss things that had come up during the session. I was able to discuss what thoughts I had during the session and after, and like what I made of the experience. So yeah, I think definitely if I wasn't able to talk to you guys about it after, and it was just the dosing and then you're done, then it probably wouldn't have been helpful much at all.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the support that was there was great, and I think it's probably what made it a good experience.
Yeah. Is this an experience that you'd recommend other people with anxiety potentially try in terms of a psychedelic, study for?
100%.
Yeah.
100%. I would recommend it to everybody, and I recommend it to friends. I recommend it to family. I've recommended various friends of mine to like fill out the questionnaire to see if they qualify for anything. And then my mom is a psychiatric nurse practitioner, and she sees patients, and then whenever she sees patients that could potentially qualify, she always likes to send them over the information for Segal Trials, just because she was interested in a trial too, but she wasn't able to get into one, and I told her about my experience.
Yeah.
So I feel like it could help everybody. I don't know.
Yeah.
Even if they're not like super anxious or super depressed, I feel like it could be a beneficial experience if done under the right circumstances.
And what would you say to people who might have concerns about participating in a clinical trial, or have concerns about maybe having a bad trip or other aspects of taking a psychedelic? Is there any sort of advice or suggestions you'd give to them?
I'd say if they're curious, that there's no better place to try it, especially if you meet the criteria and if you're offered the opportunity to be part of the study. I think there's no reason not to, because you guys are here, you're very supportive, you make everybody feel safe and welcome, and like they're in good hands. And yeah, I would recommend it to anybody who's struggling or just thinking of treatment options for the way that they feel, whether it be depression or anxiety. I don't know. You're in good hands.
Yeah.
It's probably better than doing it at home.
Yeah.
Definitely better than doing it at home. But I would recommend everybody to do it.
If you or someone you know might be interested in participating in a clinical trial at the Center for Psychedelic Research at Segal Trials, located in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, you can visit our website or give us a call to learn more information.